welcome to the At Peace Parents podcast. I'm Casey, and I'm here to empower you in your decision-making as a parent of a demand-avoidant child. My goal is to share insights that will generate aha moments and support your connection with your child. I'm a mom of two amazing little boys, one of whom is PDA, and I've worked with hundreds of parents just like you to teach them how to lead their child out of burnout and find the clarity, peace, and sense of community they need. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live show, the At Peace Parents live show. Today, I'm going to be talking to two parents of PDAers, and we're going to be using the skills that we learn to support our PDA children and teens to help these parents get unstuck.
Hi, Casey.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, good. So nice to finally meet you after watching you for a very long time.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Where are you tuning in from?
Long Island, New York.
Long Island. Awesome. So we're on the same time zone. Very cool.
Yes.
How are you feeling about chatting today?
Excited. Really excited.
So not too nervous or anything?
A little nervous. I definitely, probably neurodivergent myself going through that road. So I definitely get a lot of social anxiety, but I'm trying to really be present and just take in what you have to say. So.
Awesome. Well, you're in good company. And yeah, it's just think of it like it's just me and you today. So Christine, I have your question here. We have a couple options. I can read it, or you can state it, or you can ask a different question if you woke up this morning and add an amendment to your question.
Yeah, I'll read something. I mean, it's basically the same question, but I had kind of a whole episode with my daughter last night that maybe was meant for this, or that's how I like to look at it. So I kind of amended it a little bit. So I'll read it if that's okay.
Awesome.
Okay, so, I'm currently using a neuroplastic approach for self-healing childhood trauma and doing a lot of inner child work on myself. And this came about basically from, the past 5 years raising my daughter. I thought I made it through having a difficult childhood. And then this showed me a lot of things as I started to get a lot of physical symptoms and stuff that's coming out my body and my nervous system. So, raising her for me has been at times very challenging, since a lot of the equalizing behaviors are very triggering to my stuff, so to speak. And I've come, through your help and all the content you've put out there, I'm able to develop awareness around the disability. And that's helped a lot, but I'm definitely still struggling. At times, I had an episode happen last night where I was really caught off guard, where you could let me know from what happened, I think was equalizing. And I didn't pick it up as equalizing. And it really triggered me to the point where I was in tears. And I was like, wow, I feel like I'm getting abused by my child. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard. And normally I've gotten better with a lot of her behaviors because, I just see it as equalizing and I'm able to separate it. But this one was tough for me. And a lot of times I think that fear now of my own self-preservation, because I started getting a lot of physical things and I got nervous for my body and my nervous system and what's happening within me, to where I get kind of protective with that. And I'm starting to fear the equalizing behavior. And that's tough because that's fueling decisions, like big decisions I'm making around her potentially doing co-ops, any kind of separation from me. When do I push? When do I pull? I want her to have growth, but yet a lot of the time it's at the expense of my nervous system, where she wants to engage with her cousin Brielle, who's her special interest, which was the episode from yesterday that I had, but yet it's this cost. And then I find myself in this place, and it's kind of this stuck place of like, okay, I have this going on within me. I want her to grow. And I don't know, I struggle sometimes with that cost benefit of like what to do. And yeah, so and I had this incident yesterday, which completely caught me off guard and kind of pertained to all this. So,
yeah. Would you mind, or would you like to share a little bit more detail about what happened?
Yeah, so I can give you a little bit of just background. She's 5.5. I've known she's PDA. I didn't know what PDA was, but I've known this since she was an infant, that I had this intuition. And when I found you, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my child. Like I knew it in my soul. And so I've gone after that. I did get an autism diagnosis for her. So she's diagnosed autistic. The PDA in Long Island, they don't really do here. So, but I'm okay with that because I just know. So we've been basically using the lens. She's come a long way. I did put her in last year. She was in preschool, just 2 days a week for 2 hours at a farm because it was in nature. I tried to set her up, but the separation, I guess, from me as her safe person put her nervous system too far to where she was, even with my accommodation, she was near burnout. Like couldn't sleep at night. She was waking up with panic attacks. And then I found out, I guess what her stickiest basic need was the toileting. So she started withholding for weeks at a time. She was having streaks constantly in her underwear. Dad and I were starting to really get concerned that there could be, physical damage going on because she was having stomach aches. Anyway, in a nutshell, I went into like lockdown with her. I was like, that's it. We're dumping the farm school. It's costing too much. She was days in ahead, and I struggled. I'm like, is it anxiety? Do I push and say, okay, like she's having anticipatory anxiety because it was days before. She's like, I think I'm going to have to go. Waking up in the night, screaming about it. So I pushed. And then when it started to affect the basic needs, I pulled back. So we took her out of the farm school. Since then, we've been in a year, like basically it destroyed my nervous system in the mix because the equalizing behaviors were so intense with her going to the farm school that I started with hives, all kinds of physical stuff going on with me. Like my nervous system was in spillover.
Yeah.
So now the past year, we've been working on me trying when I can to work on myself while being her sole caretaker. And she also gets extremely activated when I try to do anything for myself. She'll make fun of my qigong or whatever I'm doing. It's like poopy qigong, or it's she's got to equalize all around that. So I'm struggling when I can when her dad's around, which is very minimal. Me and her dad are like her safe people. Even like the mother-in-law, or she masks and then unloads. So it's very hard. Like it's a cost, even if I choose to have someone watch her so that I could get 10 minutes. So basically that's the nutshell of where we're at. So the past year we've been just working on, I would say she's back in equilibrium where the accidents are few, occasionally some streaks. I just take it as indicators, like, okay, she's a little more activated, pull back. She's been all right. She's been sleeping. She needs to. So it went from like the streaks to now she co-sleeps sometimes, but she will sleep. So I'll notice if she's having an uptick, I need to sleep. Can I sleep in your bed tonight? Can you stay with me? Which is fine. So we've been kind of coasting like that, but I've been trying to take what I can when I can get it to myself without telling her. Like if she's in her screen, I'm like kind of in the other room secretively doing my qigong because if she knows, she'll freak out. I've been going that way. So instead of directing the question that way and like, how do I get time to myself without activating her? I'd like to more spend it on. Yesterday, I didn't catch her equalizing. So we had her cousin. She loves her cousin Brielle. Her cousin Brielle is like her special interest, but she's a little older and she's also extremely activating to Avery, where I notice cumulatively afterwards there's a lot of activation. So yesterday we had her over and it was like this. We went to the beach, which is, it gives her the sensory and all of that. So I'm like, okay, I'll let her go because it's giving her that dopamine. Because sometimes if we're just in the house, we're walking in circles. I'm bored. So I'm like, let's go out. So we went, and then my niece is asked to come back to the house. So it's always hard because I'm like, well, I know Avery probably had enough. Because I don't know, you can tell me if it's typical of PDA kids. So like maybe it's the autism. A lot of times when I notice when she plays with children, she loves it, but she gets overloaded. And it's extremely taxing to her where like then she's on the couch for a day after that. And she can't, she just needs the iPad, or she's very nonverbal, or so I get confused on that of like, is that a bad thing? But no, like she has to play with kids. So I had them come back and she had this whole episode where Now looking back, I could see probably the event did not matter. But she asked me and her cousin Brielle to throw her in the pool. We threw her in the pool. She freaked out on me. She
Okay.
was like, I did not want to get thrown in the pool. She was running away from me like a feral animal. She was crawling around on the floor, screaming, just like wouldn't talk to me, was hiding. And it was challenging because I had my two nieces and they were saying things to her like, Avery, it's not your mom's fault. Like you asked her to, and, like all these
Yeah.
typical things because they don't understand. So we went through this whole thing. And in the end, I tried everything. I tried, going after her to the best of my ability with the other kids there. I laid on the floor beside her. I was trying to connect with her in any way. I said, Mommy, so sorry. I should have known that you didn't want to get thrown in the pool. Like, I tried to do everything I could, but she was just so cold. And it was like this look. It took me back to like when she was a child. And I know it sounds crazy, but she almost used to scare me at
Hmm.
times to where I was like, oh my God, like something's wrong, like something's off with this child. Like she used to have this look where it would come over her and she was just not there.
Yeah.
And
So
she
she's
looked
not
at
there.
me.
She's not there. She's in her survival brain. Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, yesterday, I was coming from like, I want to help you. I'm your mom and I see you're hurting and I just want to lay here next to you and I want to connect with you and I want you to talk to me, and she wouldn't speak and she was just and I started to cry because I just got emotional with, how she was treating me, like the nastiness and the hitting so I got emotional and she just looked at me and she was like, "You're crying?" And it was like this and I just was like I had to step away. Like I just
Yeah.
I lost it. It got my I think abandonment and I just felt like I put all of this into her. Sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
Over the last year and she's my everything, and to feel in that moment like she like one mistake because I'm always weighing, it's exhausting. I'm always like, do I do like I tell her all the time, everything I do is for her. Everything, it's like I want her to have social experiences with kids, but it's challenging because then I see the toll it takes on her and then the toll it takes on me because then I have to write out the equalizing. And with my trauma, it's tough. So at the end of the day, so now we went through this whole thing and I'm trying to condense it. I'm so sorry. We
Don't
go
need
through
to
this whole
apologize.
thing. I'm in tears. I take a minute. I leave her by herself at this point and I put the screen on. I'm like, let me put the screen on for the kids. She got into the screen. I was struggling still in my being with like, wow, my child didn't care about me. She was actually like mad that I was crying and like, what the hell, quite frankly, was going on. And later in the night, so I went to walk the dogs. My husband got home, thankfully. I took a minute. I came back in the house and now I was expecting all hell to break loose because typically she's externalized. So I'm used to the hitting. That's what I was expecting. Like I was expecting this big, I'm like, no, it's not equalizing. She was actually mad at me. Like I must have breached her trust with throwing her in her head. Like she thought I breached her trust and that wasn't equalizing. So I took it really to heart. And then when I got home, she was like watching her show. She came over, she gave me a hug, and she said, I accept your apology, Mommy.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay. And then when we went to bed, now I was expecting a fit because I'm like, she was like in freeze. She was like catatonic. She was on the floor. She wouldn't speak to me. Her legs won't work. Like, so I was usually that will end in a huge meltdown, screaming, like more of an externalized thing. It didn't. She hugged me. And then when we went to go to bed, she started talking to me on her own. And she said, Mommy, I have to tell you something. I said, okay. I said, I want to hear. And she said, Brielle, today I wanted the iPad and Brielle wouldn't give me a turn with the iPad. And I had to wait. I had to wait for my turn. And then the iPad died. And she started going through all these case scenarios. And in my head, I'm like, she's telling me all the losses of autonomy
Hmm.
that she had to go through as she was playing with her cousin today. And it weighed, must have weighed so much on her that it didn't matter that I threw her in the pool. It wasn't about that.
Yeah.
This
That
is
was,
the way I'm reading it, now in retrospect, looking back, I'm like, it was about the fact that she needed to do that to me. at that time to regulate herself. And she was actually able to get back there because she was like fine when I got home. She was talking to me and I was like, I was expecting her to be like, I'm like, oh my God, I put her into burnout. She's like catatonic on the floor. And she was talking to me about like what she felt. So that's just an example. And I'm going to let you
Yeah,
talk, but that was
great
yesterday.
example. Okay. Okay, there's three things that are coming up. So first, I want to normalize what you're feeling. Just like I'm going to share my own experience. So like I've done a lot of trauma work around the PTSD that I had from my older externalized son going through burnout. And I did EMDR work where I would reprocess like the way that my mind made meaning around my son's behavior. And one of the images that I have from infancy on was like of a hairless rat demon. Like that's actually how my brain was seeing my infant son who wouldn't stop crying, right? So like, and then that was exacerbated throughout the same age and the same years you're describing, where like I remember bringing down laundry in a basket and falling on the stairs and really hurting the back of my leg and him laughing at me, or having that thought of like there's no empathy here, like he doesn't care about anyone but himself. And it took a lot of trauma work and attachment work like post burnout for my subconscious to actually like start seeing him differently, not just my behaviors, but the way that my body read being with him. Cause I was like hyper vigilant, even way past burnout. So this is common for parents of PDA children, especially if they have a sensitive nervous system, are neurodivergent themselves, and or have their own trauma. And it sounds like you have all three. Your nervous system and brain has made meaning and also has some wiring around like this, my child is a threat, right? And that's not your fault. And it's, I think, a very common experience. Okay. So I just want to normalize that first. My son at 5.5 was very similar to what you're describing. So there's a couple of things, like three things that came up for me as you were speaking. The first is like, just for the benefit of all of us, going back to the basics of like the PDA lens, to talking about both the logic of PDA intersecting with our tendency for perfectionism as parents, and then getting to some of the meaning making around these moments. Originally, when I read your question, I was like, oh, this is a cost benefit question, but I don't know if it is. But I'm happy if you're like, no, Casey, I want to take a scenario and go through the cost benefit. I'm happy to do that. But that's like where my intuition was guiding me for what you need today. So you tell me if that feels intuitively like the right direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard. I relate to a lot of what you're saying, and I've had those feelings of her. It's the same things you're describing. Like when I get sick, it's like, you can't be sick. Like you're sick, there's no empathy. There's no, if I'm hurt, she's like, my leg hurts worse. And, it's a lot
Yeah.
of these things that I'm like, oh yeah, no. But me getting sick over the past year, I think is exactly what you're saying, is like my subconscious is now seeing her as a threat and now it's coming out in my body. And that's where I'm afraid, like how do I do this and be a mom and take care of myself and also give her what she needs? That's a big chunk of it. And I know what you're saying, like the cost benefit would be, yes, it does affect my decisions of like, well, I pulled her out of the school. Do I keep trying to put little activities in there? I guess those would be my only cost benefit questions, would be like, am I doing it right when it comes to like still encouraging these play dates with her cousins and stuff like that, despite the activation? Maybe for me, for our family, like trying school, like to me, that's already off the table. Like we couldn't handle farm school for 2 hours twice a week. So I'm
Yeah.
also embarking now, potentially having to homeschool when I have my own nervous system struggles. So it's a lot because it's just me and her constantly. So
Yeah.
I think where you're going with it, instead of doing like a specific cost benefit, I think might be a better,
Yeah.
you let me know to talk about.
We could, but I think the importance of the cost benefit for you, like I could walk you through the beginning of it just because I think conceptually there's a part that's intersecting with these points about perfectionism and meaning that is going to make it easier for you to think about decisions in general.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I wrote down some of the things that you were like wondering about. Okay. So if we go back to the PDA lens, right? The PDA lens is a tool, not a diagnostic, right? Where it's just like, I am going to put on these glasses and see everything through the lens of subconscious perception of threat around autonomy and equality and cumulative nervous system activation over time, right? Which you seem to have a good grasp on.
Thanks to you.
Well, thank you. Well, you did the work. But your question about like, is this autism? Is this sensory? Is this PDA? Like what the PDA lens tells us is just like, yes, it can be lots of other things why she might end up exhausted on the couch. But just
Right.
like she told you, this happened, this happened, this happened. She's describing losses of autonomy, right? And that happens when kids spend time with other kids. Because unless they're accommodating the other child intentionally all the time, which we can't expect of children or siblings, they're going to be, even if they're having fun, subconsciously perceiving these threats in their nervous system, right? And it builds to a tipping point, and the tipping point was you throwing her in the pool, okay? So a little bit of clarity can come from just like, even if there are social communication differences and sensory stuff, I'm just going to keep my PDA lens on for now and just assume that all behavior is related to this, which is also tied into the equalizing of just like anything she is doing that's critical or controlling or aggressive towards you, it's always because she's trying to seek safety, right? It's not personal.
I have trouble with that.
I know. I heard that. And that's why we're also going to talk about meaning, which there's the meaning your brain makes in the frontal lobe, right? In the prefrontal cortex, which is like our rational thinking, right? So you and I can sit here and talk about it's just data. It's not personal. The reason she's doing it with you is because you're the safest of the safe. But in the moment, it doesn't matter what we've talked about here if you have that pathway from childhood trauma, right?
Yeah.
We can get ourselves back a little quicker if we have those reminders of like, it's just data, it's never personal, this is actually a reflection of safety. But sometimes, even when we know that, we still go down our activation pathway ourselves, right? But whenever you're up at night questioning, and you have the capacity to get in your thinking brain, and maybe it's your husband who reminds you of like, it is not personal. Okay. So you can literally pour your entire nervous system into her nervous system. But if she's in the like survival part of her brain, it doesn't matter because it's just her brain is perceiving danger or life threat. And nobody is empathetic or connected or able to do perspective taking when they have like a gun to their head, metaphorically speaking.
Right. So that's when she was looking like absent and had no so that's what was happening last night that I was reading as, whoa, like where's my child? Yeah.
Absolutely. Like that's not her. Think
Yeah,
about
no.
yourself. Like if you were held up at gunpoint in a dark alley, like your facial expression, your tone, the things you'd say, and the way that your body moved would not make you look like necessarily an empathetic person unless you went into
Absolutely.
a fawn response.
Yeah, I think last night what got me was I didn't have my PDA glasses on. I didn't pick up on that was equalizing. I thought, whoa, like I actually like pushed her boundary and this is legitimate and she's like in her rational mind and she's angry and I blew our trust and everything I've cultivated over the last
Yeah.
year on like throwing her in the pool. And I just went, I didn't see it. I didn't see it until after, until she showed it to me, which was actually a gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
She
she's
was like ready for this call. She's like, Mom,
she must have been
remember, we're going to put the PDA lens on.
right.
So we want to, again, think of it. And you have glasses just like me. Like, the first thing we ask ourselves is, did my glasses fall off? Am I taking this personally? Do I need to put them back on? Like, and I get it. It's really hard to do, but that's why it's a tool of just like, okay, putting them back on. This is not personal. I didn't break the trust. And then this leads us into the second part of what I sort of distilled from what you were saying, which is this thread of perfectionism that I'm pulling out. Okay. So we want to remember that PDA is a nervous system disability, right? And so even if you did everything perfectly 100% of the time, which nobody does, it wouldn't make all of this go away.
Right.
Okay. And we also want to think about the good news, the uniqueness of PDA, where all those losses of autonomy she described, it's building towards her threshold of tolerance, right? And then you went into the pool and she tipped over into full-blown panic, perceiving life threat. It's really hard because we have these children who enjoy doing things like from a frontal lobe and heart space, but then they have a subconscious perception of threat building at the same time.
Yeah.
Like when my son, like when he started playing football, he loved it. He wasn't anxious about it, but he would still tip over into big meltdowns.
Yeah.
Okay? This is hard, but the good news is because it's cumulative, every loss of autonomy and equality, we can make a lot of progress by reducing those losses by 50%, right? We don't want to think of mistakes or not reading exactly where their threshold was that day, or sometimes just having to activate them because we need to eat our meal as, oh, they're going to go back into burnout and I've disrupted trust. It's actually just, okay, if I'm choosing 2 out of 3 times to accommodate, on that third time, yes, they may activate, but it's still overall, we're moving towards creating a window.
Right. I think from you saying that, what hits home with me is I think I'm still at the stage where having the PTSD from that year where she was in farm school, I'm scared. I'm scared even to activate, I think is the problem. So that's where like mornings where I'm like, well, I played with you one-on-one for 3 hours. And now I need some quiet time, and she's not in agreement with that. And I'm like trying to get her on the screen, and now I'm afraid to activate her. So I spite myself, and then I'm activated in my system because I'm like, I need a break, and I can't live like this, and this can't be on one person. This isn't realistic.
Totally.
And so I think I'm trapped in that. I'm still afraid to activate that she's gonna like combust and not go to the bathroom and all of this. So that's where like I was even talking to my coach, and she said to me, you need to get help in your daughter's disability space because this isn't what you're trying to do. You're going to burn out. You can't do this. She's like, you can't hold this right now. So I'm like, okay, so
yeah,
that's where I need you because I feel like I'm afraid to activate her.
So, okay. So this is a very, very common thing. And this is why sometimes I'm like, I think 90% of the time what I'm putting on social media is super helpful, but the fact that it's reels and it's snippets and it's never this nuance, which is why I'm so glad we're doing this for other parents and for you, is like, we can't accommodate all the time and we're never going to get away from all the activation. And so we have to give ourselves permission to move into the mindset of like, there will be activation. This is part of the nervous system disability. I can manage this and move into both the cost benefit decision making, which takes the whole system into account, including you. And I can also remember that de-escalation and diffusion are accommodations, right? That's what happens after the activation. But we can't, like in my family, I do a lot of de-escalation, right? And I think about this stuff all the time. I'm working on it all the time. And like, nothing I can do will prevent there from being the disability. So like when you mentioned this decision point, of like, I've played with my kid for 3 hours and now my body actually needs a break.
Yeah.
That's
Like I
where
could
we,
feel, I'll start to feel it. I'll be like, okay, yeah.
yeah. So what I want to do is we won't have time to go through the whole thing, but I want to show you how I would think about it. And we can send you this template afterwards. Okay, so the first step, Christine, of decision making, the constraints are just things we can't change in the moment we're making the decision. So, like if you are on a day, a typical day, and you're like, I played for 3 hours and now I'm deciding whether or not to take a break. That's the decision point. But the constraints are like things that exist in your life on that day that you can't change when you're making that decision.
Okay.
Right. So it's like, you said childhood trauma. Do you have other siblings for your child or no?
No, that's the one thing that she's an only child, so it makes things a little easier.
Okay. So you have childhood trauma, can't attend school currently. Is that a constraint or something you're thinking about?
I mean, I would say it's a constraint in the sense of it just puts more on me in the day, but I think it's something I'm thinking about co-op style. I don't think I would never think she's a candidate for full-time, like a public school type situation. No, at this point, not seeing the indicators we saw last year.
Okay. So
Maybe like 2 days a week kind of thing. That's what I'm exploring with her. Like maybe eventually can we do a drop off like 2 days a week just to give me 2 hours or something,
Yeah. Okay. So that's another cost benefit, but let's hone in on this like decision point that I think is so common. Like I remember this with my older son of like, I literally just need to shut the door and be in my own sensory space. But if I shut the door, he will try and break it down. So like, what do I do? Right? How do I do this? So you have anxiety and neurodivergence, childhood trauma. Your daughter can't attend full-time public school. Do you also work outside of the home or
I don't now. I'm just her primary caretaker. My husband works, so he's basically never around, but it's just me and her this way because she gets very activated even with like a grandparent, they don't accommodate. So it's hard. It's just me.
Okay, so these are our constraints, which we're just going to accept in this moment, right? And so this decision making facilitates acceptance and it can produce grief. So it's okay to feel that as we're going through this, right? But these are just the constraints that you have when you're making the decision. The second step is, Christine, you and I identified a decision point of like, I've played for 3 hours. Now what do I do? Right? So in this type of decision making, we never focus on like making the kid do something. It's just like, what is reasonably under my control in the moment? Right? So like option 1 is keep playing. Option 2 is to negotiate and give her equality and do what she wants, which will probably end up in keep playing. Option 3 is to remove yourself but stay within eye shot. Option 4 is to remove yourself for self-care but go in another room. Option 5 would be remove yourself for self-care and shut the door and or lock it. So unless we have another person involved, which it seems like we don't from your constraints, these are really our only options. Unless you can think of something else that I didn't mention.
I think that would be really it. Usually the first one I would try to go to is see if she's willing to go on the screen is basically my babysitter. Sometimes using that to do self-care is better than like involving a grandparent or someone saying, hey, you're going to go to this one's house or this one's going to come over because that's usually more activating for her. So I'll say, do you want to have iPad time? And then I'll sit next to her, but at least having like, I'll put my earbud in where she thinks I'm looking at what she's like, she really doesn't know that I'm not tuned into her show because I'm listening to something like music to calm myself, or, trying to do a practice for myself because it's hard. Like I'm trying to get my visualization practices in or things for myself. But if I'm not looking at her screen, she'll
Mhm.
activate. She'll be like, I want you to watch. And she'll start talking to me about every part. Or so that's sometimes a challenge I face with the screen is like it's different if I'm unplugged from her screen but beside her versus being plugged into what she's watching. She'll notice the difference and then that's activating for her. So
Yeah. Okay, so I added an option 2.5. Use screen and sit next to her.
Right.
With an earbud. Okay, so that sounds like that's your status quo. I'm just going to highlight that. And so what we would do, if we were going to go through the whole thing, is we would compare it to another option of like, well, what are your other options, right? So if your body is physically shutting down, option 1, keep playing, doesn't sound like a viable option, right? Option 2 would probably result in like you expending energy in negotiation and then still playing. So it's kind of like number 1. Number 2 is 2.5 is like a hybrid, but also you're not getting the sensory space, like to actually focus on your own care. And sometimes that's all we can do.
I'm hiding it. I find I'm hiding it a lot. I'm trying to fit it in where I can. Yeah, where she doesn't know.
Yeah. And then so the only other options are the boundary of you deciding to remove yourself in different ways, right? There's no magic strategy that like, oh, if I just did it this way or said it in this way, or, if I did improv in this way, she would just agree to it. So that's a place that parents get stuck too of like, I'm not doing it right because I only have these options.
Right.
So this is actually what
the reality.
Yeah, this is what it is. And so here I want to normalize, okay, you have option 2.5. This is hybrid. You could explore options 3 through 5, pick one of those, and then we would compare it, those status quo and the option you chose, looking at the cost benefit to everybody in the family system's nervous system.
Okay.
So yours included. Okay. So often what we see when we do this exercise is that you're choosing between really shitty options, right?
Right. Yep.
You have kind of like self-care that isn't really feeling like self-care because you're hyper-vigilant as you're trying to do self-care, or you're deciding to remove yourself, and that might result in her activation that's so much that she will follow you and scream, and then you're also
right. Then you have to de-escalate, and then that's where a lot of the times I give up my own self-care because I'm like, either I have to sit here and now de-escalate this just to get the 20 minutes of qigong, which like it's not even worth it,
It's the qigong doesn't offset like the getting physically attacked in the moment.
Right.
Correct. Okay, so this is what it is right now, and it sucks, and I've been there. Doesn't mean it's always going to be this cost benefit in this way, but accepting that this is how it is right now, and then moving into, and honestly, the answer might be experimenting with removing yourself, putting yourself in another room and locking the door. And she might have a huge activation, but then she might go back to her iPad, right? And sometimes we have to experiment with this stuff. And that's really crunchy, and it brings up a lot of fear, and we're afraid to do it wrong. But like sometimes we have to toggle between trying new stuff and seeing what happens, kind of in the way that organically it happened to your family, where you throwing her into the pool had this big activation, but then she came to you and told you what happened inside of her brain and body.
She did, yeah.
And you weren't expecting that.
No, not at all.
So in the moments, let's say that we went through this whole thing and you're like, oh, it's just 2 shitty options. Like, I have these 2 shitty options. So one thing we can do then is get creative within constraints And
Oh,
we,
can I just ask one thing, Casey? Because I
yeah,
know
yeah,
you've mentioned this in the past, just while we're on it. Do you find, I don't know with your son, I know you said you had like another caregiver, like help aside from you and your husband. I know you have two and it gets complicated. With her, I just have the one, but I do notice like sometimes I question, people will suggest, well, just have her go out, have your mother-in-law come over and do the make things talk and do the play with her so that you can get your care, and she has another nervous system. But what I find with her is if it's not me or her dad, it
mhm.
almost doesn't count as another safe nervous system. So then there's activation. So I always question around that. Like, should I use that as an option or should I consider that a constraint, just like that's going to activate her further? That's not an option. Like, I never know where to play with having outside help, I
Yeah.
guess.
So that would be the next step after this cost benefit, right? So let's say you did this cost benefit and you're like, ugh, these are only options I hate and I can't deal with it. Then we go back to the constraints, which is one of them you put, which is like, grandparents and other people can't care for her in a way that doesn't introduce a cost from masking. So then when we accept our options, we go back to the constraints with different eyes and different incentives, right? So, and we can get more creative. So, just personally, like I spent probably 2 years plus with my older son in burnout where he could not be with other people. It was just me, right? And then sometimes my husband. And then it evolved, right? Like when we first started having people in the home, it was more directed towards my younger son. And then there would be periods of time where he could like be bounced on the trampoline by another person or pushed on the swing or doing play with another person. But it was not a plug and play, drop him off, do something. That's not to say there weren't some times where I knew I have to just take on this cost to survive and I will deal with the activation afterwards.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah.
So the recharge, when parents are stuck with like, I actually can't do self-care, which it sounds like you're kind of there, that's when we go into the meaning stuff of like, can I find meaning in the caregiving itself that relates to my purpose or my healing intergenerational trauma? And when we're low on that autonomy for true self-care, sometimes we have to go high on meaning.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've been doing. I've been calling it like a reframe. Like I'm trying to reframe her in my practice in that this is for a bigger purpose. And I mean, it's true, I'm like, God gave me this for a reason. He gave me her. I mean, like I prayed for her so hard and like, she's my everything. So I'm like, there's purpose in this. And if I can try and think of it that way, it feels less of an entrapment.
Yes.
Because if I feel trapped, then that's just creating more trauma, is what it feels like in my nervous system, which is
Yeah.
where I'm coming out with like all these issues and sensitivities.
You
And
need choice.
yeah,
You need
yeah,
context, choice, connection to feel safe in your nervous system. The other thing is if you can maybe find a meaning that relates to your own growth and your own learning, not necessarily like, not to say your meaning wasn't wonderful. We need that but like sometimes being like, I am getting so much better at, or wow, I am like in a boot camp for patience and I'm going to come out on the other side of like being the most patient person in all of Long Island.
yeah. That's a good way to look at it too. Yeah.
And that can also give us that storyline of like, it's not going to be like this forever. I'm going to come out on the other side and there's growth because your story is not stopping here.
Yeah. No, it's a time, a little space and time that we're going through this, that it feels like, but I just feel like what we're investing now and investing in her is so big. And you're totally right on the perfectionist thing, that's something from my childhood. And I guess that's why it was activating last night, because I'm like, oh, I messed up. So that's it. Like, I'm not lovable. I'm not, that's it. I blew everything and I'm not worthy of love. That's something that I have to work on within my own self. So it's bringing up a lot of those things, which I guess is like opportunity for self growth, like you're saying too. But just with a lot of the behaviors, it gets tough. And then I beat
Yeah.
myself up around those decisions of like, well, did I push her too far because she had a play date and I had the kids come back? And then, so that's how you would treat those situations as well, right? The same thing. So when I'm debating, like, do I have the play date with the activating special interest cousin? Same thing. It's like a cost benefit of, do I want the activation up front by saying no, I guess, or do
Yeah.
I
But
want to?
also taking in your own nervous system into account and knowing that as we're learning our children and ourselves, there will be experimentation, right? Sometimes I don't know what the best decision is, but what I know for myself and for parents is that making the decision and moving from there is what gets parents unstuck. So if you can just remind yourself, the decision itself is not right or wrong. It's just a decision. And then we're going to get more data and we're going to learn and we're going to keep growing and evolving. There is no mistake. Right. Because every time you learn like you did, you threw her in the pool, she asked for it. And then all of a sudden there's this opening of like, it sucked to go through it.
Yeah.
But like, wow, you're getting more clarity on that cumulative nervous system activation, the tipping point. Oh yeah, I got to keep my PDA lens on. And oh, look at her explaining how her brain and body works to me at 5.5.
Yeah.
Like that's incredible connection and self-awareness, which will serve her whole life.
Yeah, thank you for that. I did take that in. I was like, wow, I guess that means something, that over this past year, she felt comfortable enough to tell me, to come to me and tell me what was going on in her body versus just internalizing and hitting herself in the head and, all these things that we were doing a year ago. So I guess it's a sign of some progress.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, 5.5 is a tough time for an externalized PDA-er, but you're doing great.
Yeah.
And just remember, like, there are no mistakes, right? Like if you're doing the best you can, you're considering the cost benefit, you're following your intuition. Sometimes we just have to decide and then see what happens.
Yeah. I think I'm so afraid to like break her. So that's a really good point that you're making, because I'm just like, I'm like, no, that decision was wrong. Like that was a mistake. That's bad. Now she's like, closer to her threshold, or her, ultimately I think my biggest fear is that like she's actually going to go into burnout. And because we haven't gone through that, like we've gotten close, I've seen the uptick in the basic needs, the with her withholding and with the sleep and all that, and I'm like, I don't want her to go through that because it's really hard on them. So I think that's still a big fear of mine, is like I'm going to push her too far one day, she's going to break, and that's what's governing like my decision making and fear around that.
Yeah, we want to make decisions from trust and from love rather than fear of what could happen, right?
That's a really good point.
Making decisions from love, it's never going to lead you wrong.
I love that. You said that from the beginning when I listened to you, and I love that because when family and everyone would be like, oh, like she's gonna turn out like she's gonna be a serial killer, you can't do that. And I'm like, that just resonated with me, because it's like I'm just following my heart and I'm doing what I know, and that resonates so much. Like when you follow love and you just trust that like they're good, and her and her person is love, like that's what we all are, so just following that. That's what I don't know what school is going to look like. I used to be a teacher, so this is all new territory for me. I'm like, I can't teach her right now. She gets too activated from looking at a letter, and I don't know what this story is going to look like, but I just know that I'm following love, and it's going to unfold how it's meant, I guess,
Yeah, you're doing great. I'm excited to see how things evolve for your family. And just remember, like, you can trust yourself.
Okay, I will try.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's very nice to meet you,
So
Christy.
nice to finally meet you. And thank you for all you and Jake are doing. I really mean that. It's been such a blessing. Everything you put out there for our family. I really think you've you've saved our family from going through burnout thus far. So
You did
thank you.
that. You did that. I didn't do the work. But you are so welcome. It's my honor and pleasure. All right. Good luck with everything.
Thanks, Casey. Take care.
You too. Bye, Christine.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for being here with me at the At Peace Parents podcast. This is your source for all things related to understanding, supporting, accommodating, and advocating for your PDA child. To go deeper on any of these topics, check out my course offerings and masterclasses at the website www.atpeaceparents.com. To completely transform the way you think about and relate to your child and to bring peace and stability to your home, join us for the next cohort of the Paradigm Shift program.